3 beers.
No better time than now to start.
Whiskey.
Tequila.
More beer.
Bloody Mary.
Jesus.
More vodka.
More beer. Stone Cold was a drunk.
Yeah, he was.
Dude, I love wrestling. I don't know if you know this. I love wrestling.
I think a lot of people have started to understand that this podcast, we talk about wrestling, I think at least once an episode.
But it's mostly older wrestling.
Well, yeah, new wrestling is garbo.
I mean, well, yes and no. There's aspects of it that I don't like, but it's not that it's garbo, it's that it's more
like
PG.
Yeah, it's like more family friendly. So like, I think that's what a lot of people's problems with. Like, I mean, like if you grew up with wrestling, you're probably still a wrestling fan. But like, I feel like it's kind of like old hip hop versus new hip hop.
Yeah,
it's like there's still people who are like, no, old hip hop is way better than new hip hop.
Yeah,
and then there's people who are like, no, new hip hop is way better than old hip hop.
And there's people just like, I just like the music. Like me, I like it. I'm here for it. But no, because I was watching this thing because I totally forgot that ECW back in the day used to have this whole random thing where like they do strip poker with like the ladies. But it wasn't just like, oh, they're in their bras. It was legitimate strip poker. And they would like air it on sci-fi TV.
What the hell?
Yeah. Sorry, Ma. But I was watching something about it. Because I was like going through all this stuff like, oh, you know, because you always remember someone who used to wrestle. And you kind of look up what they're doing now. So as it goes on, I'm just looking up all these old people. And then I also get to like, not just the men, but the women as well. Because I was like, well, I remember this lady. What's she doing now? Long story short, I ended up getting to this one. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I remember this girl. And I'm like, well, she did fight. She was the champion. I'm looking at all of it. And then I'm like, oh, her ECW strips. I was like, what? And it goes, ECW strip poker. And I click it, and it's the ugliest dude I ever seen. He got piercings in his face. Like, welcome to ECW strip poker.
Ew.
Yeah, dude, and they're playing it. Like, all these beautiful women are playing strip poker with this ugly guy. And long story short, like, one of them just naked, but it's blurred out. But not for them. They can see, it's just, they naked. And then they're just cheering, and then they're doing this little lady thing, and then two of them start fighting, and like naked, they're just brawling in the poker place, whatever. And I can't say it's a casino because it doesn't look like a casino. It just looks like a back alley, like warehouse, like one little poker table. But on the left hand of the screen, they have the actual people wrestling in ECW doing their wrestling match with the commentary, but then that gets pushed to the side again just because it brings it up saying, just, you know, there is a match happening. But then these ladies are just brawling, and this ugly dude's going, EC dub, EC dub, EC dub. And I'm like, dude, ugly people get, like, the best perks. I never get none of that.
No.
I mean, I respect women. I'm not going to expect them to fight naked over strip poker. But I was like, it really was a different time in wrestling. Yeah. Like, that was the wrestling stories. Or Vince McMahon cheating on his wife all the time with all the hotties, like in the stories. But I don't know if he really did in real life, but probably. Who knows?
Probably.
Like, there was one where, there's a whole story where his wife was in a coma, but like she's awake through the coma and they have her in a wheelchair. And like, he's making out or something with one of the divas right in front of her while she's in the coma. And you're like,
that's weird.
Did you write this just to make out with the beautiful women's?
Of course he did.
You have all this money, but you had to write yourself to get made out with? At least El Presidente had the you know, the genius to write him off a check and be like, leave me alone.
Oh no.
But that's why Stone Cold gave both of them the Stone Cold Stunner. Flipping off the world.
Yeah, it's just, it's for me, I guess it's so weird because obviously, like, I wasn't able to watch wrestling growing up.
I wasn't either.
So for me, like, obviously, like, now, like, going back and, like, and watching some of that stuff, like, I feel like the entertainment value is a lot higher because everything was so, like, it was so edgy back then.
Oh, it was.
Whereas, like, today, like you said, it's more family friendly and it's not, like, you know, as bad. You have, like, AJ Styles, who seems just like a regular dude.
Yeah. You got them, and then I love the New Day, Kofi Kingston, Big E, and Xavier Woods, but that's a testament to it. They're probably the most, like, family-friendly group ever in the existence. You know, they do the unicorns, they had that cereal, the Bootios. You could really buy that cereal. But back in the day, man, you had Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, and he was just, being a jerk to people, Stone Cold flipping people off, drinking beers.
Yeah, like, it seems like it's like you knew that they were like a persona, and it's like there's no way that someone would act like that in real life. Whereas like today, you could see someone like AJ Styles or like Roman Reigns just like trying to
who they are.
just being a regular dude who knows how to who knows how to wrestle.
Yeah, I mean, Booker T and Stone Cold got into a fight in the grocery store. You don't see that nowadays.
No.
They was doing the sewage on each other with the hose. What else was they doing? Hitting each other with cars and all that crazy stuff. Like, they still do some crazy stuff now, but like,
Or it's
back
like
then,
even all of the times that like Stone Cold would have all those beefs with Vince. And, like, he's laying in the hospital with a broken leg, and Stone Cold's his nurse and just starts pounding on his cast in bed.
I don't have it now. They're like, oh, he's in the hospital. Well, I'll beef with someone else.
Yeah, and it's like, it just seems to have, like, deviated, like, to just being just generic in a weird way.
And that's what's even weirder is, like, how can I put it? It's still fairly new that they've done all that. Because even back in the day, Brock Lesnar was just Brock Lesnar himself. Just, Because now he's still, but he's much more quiet about his, Except for he's in the UFC beating people up going,
I think that's his thing. Whenever he starts to, like, have, like, a really bad luck streak in the UFC, he's just like, I'll just go back to WWE. It don't matter to me. And then, he just gets bored of wrestling. He's like, I want to go beat people up, like, for real. So I'm going to go do that.
Well, it's funny because, like, Brock, I can see, obviously, is one of those guys who, like, they got a streak. They got a mean bone to them, right? Mm-hmm. But I had also watched this thing where they were talking to Brock about wrestling. And they were like, because Dana White says, that wrestling's fake. And Brock Lesnar, just one of the funniest people. He goes, Dana, yes, we all know it's fake. We get it. It's for fun, but it's just, come on.
It's like, quit beating the dead horse.
Yeah, it's what he was doing. If I can find the video, I'll send it to you later. But it's just funny to hear Brock just like be like, yes, we know it's fake. Like, what's your point?
I remember... I'm trying to remember. I think it was Joe Rogan had said something kind of along those same lines where he was just like, he's like, I'm not discrediting these people's, like, athletic abilities, but, like, I'm tired of seeing these people who, like, absolutely 100% think that wrestling is real. And I forget which wrestler it was, but they were like, hey, man, like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Like, stick to UFC. Like, you don't know anything about wrestling and yada, yada, yada. And it was like this huge beef for, like, a week. And then it just stopped. Like, no one said anything. They were like, no, I don't like it. Like, no one apologized. It was just like this weird, like, thing.
It was probably someone, like, in WWE. Like, Vince was like, hey, you better stop.
I feel like it was, like...
like, on the socials.
I feel like it was, like, Mark Henry who had said something to him about it.
That makes sense. The world's strongest man. He held the record. Or I don't know if he still does. He lifted that thing. What was it?
Oh, I don't remember anymore. I remember I watched the video a couple weeks ago when I was at
the
your
heavy
house.
object that like no one can lift with like one arm or whatever, like the world record.
Yeah, it was like some weird dumbbell or something like that.
And he did it and he goes, ah! I saw that. I said, ah!
But yeah, I feel like that's who it was, where he was just like, he's like, hey man, like, he's like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, you don't understand like all the hard work and like all of like the time and dedication that like people put into their wrestling careers.
Well, let's look this
up.
For
entertainment, but like I said, I could also be wrong because it's been so long since I think that happened last year. And it was like, and like I said, it lasted like 2 or 3 days. It was like a weird Twitter exchange or something like that.
It must have been Mark Henry.
Yeah, because...
That's what it looks like.
Yeah, because it was, like I said, it was like just one of those weird things where it was like, it happened and then it was like over before anyone knew what happened.
Well, what's even weirder is like, people are like, oh, it's fake, and everyone's like, we know. Like, who cares?
Like, it's just entertainment. Like,
they're like atheists and CrossFit trainers.
Yeah.
Like, we get it. Yeah. Who cares?
Yeah, exactly.
God doesn't exist. So what? Do you have nothing better to do? I'm vegan. Good for you, dude. Do you not have any other hobbies? Are you just gonna bug me all day?
I think it's just one of those things where it's like people will like latch on, because obviously people just like at the end of the day you just want to fit in, and so you find like a group of people who like have a like-minded idea,
Right.
like ideology as you do, and it's just like I think for me it's weird that like people let those like small little tropes just become their whole personality.
Oh my god!
Where it's like the first thing that like on Instagram is that, you know, like in their bios it's like like proud vegan, or like, you know, something along those lines, or like CrossFitter, or, you know, I'm atheist, or it's just some weird shit where it's it's like, dude, that's cool that you live your life like that, but zero people care.
Is there anything interesting else? Like anything else that might be interesting about you?
And they're like, no, I don't need anything interesting because I'm vegan.
I dress up like Spock when I debate people. Do you debate, or you just criticize everything they do? Nah, it's the same thing. No, it's not.
Was that a dig at Ben Shapiro?
Sure, why not, dude? What's he doing with his free time? Nothing. Like, let people live, dude. I don't care who you are. Anderson Cooper, is that his name? That guy?
The guy from CNN?
Sure. Whatever. Him, Howard Stern, Bill Mayer, the Ben Shapiro, any of them. I don't care what you gotta say. Just let people think what they want to think.
Yeah.
Like, fuck you for being like, yeah, I heard you thought something a little bit different than me. Well, let me tell you why you're wrong.
Yeah, and I think that's like a weird like landscape, especially in today, like in modern times, where it's like people are so, it's like they think that their opinion is the only right opinion, and it's just, it like leads to this weird thing where it's like you can't talk to anybody about anything, especially if you have like opposing viewpoints on anything. It doesn't matter what it is.
Right.
I mean, I'll use Xbox and PlayStation as an example.
Right.
It does not matter how hard you try to tell someone, be like, no, like I play Xbox because of, you know, X, Y, and Z, and it's always, you know, oh, well, that's dumb. Like, you guys have like one good exclusive, and it's like, well, I don't care about that. Like, I remember when the PS4 came out, everyone was all super jazzed up about how much quote unquote better the graphics on the PS4 were compared to the Xbox One. And I was like, because I think at the time I did own both, and I was like maybe it's just because I like don't quite understand that stuff, but I was like, they look the same.
Well, and that's the thing I never got. Like, I don't have a side-by-side comparison. Like, when someone's on a PC and like, well, I did this, I'm like, oh, I can see the graphic difference because you enhance a lot. I can see what you're doing. But I never was like, oh, wow, these graphics are like 10 times different. It's not like you're going from a PS3 to a PS4. It's a PS4 and Xbox One. They're on, like, same stuff.
It's like all the... And so it's just, you know, and I think it's just like, it's like, at the end of the day, it's almost like talking to a brick wall. It don't matter what you say.
Even this, I don't got the Xbox One X, but I know someone who does, and I watched them play some, and I was like, oh, that's a fun game. So I'm playing that game on my Xbox, right, my Xbox One. I couldn't tell you that his Xbox One X enhanced graphics looked any different than mine.
Yeah,
they're supposed to, and I was like, dang, dude, they charged you a whole extra $150 for that.
Well, and like what baffles me is like when everyone's like, it's like, oh, well, like, you know, you can't play in 60 FPS and yada yada yada. Me personally, the only real experience I've ever had with 60 FPS is like when they have like in the electronics department when they like showcase like newer TVs. That shit looks fake. It looks so weird. It's like it doesn't make sense. And like I remember seeing this guy. They were talking about like how much better PC, like I think it was in a one of the Fallout groups that I'm in on Facebook, and they were talking about how much better playing Fallout on the PC is compared to console, because they're like, well, the frame rate is so much better. And this guy was like, why care about frame rate? Like, if your eyes can only see 24 frames per second, like. Why do you need 60? And he was getting roasted.
Well, the only time that I can speak to someone needing a higher frame rate is like if you're in like the competitive gaming scene where it does really help that little edge.
Yeah.
Such as fighting game community. Because with those, each move has a specific number of frames it takes.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not playing like 60 or anything, you can't really count, okay, this is blah, 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 blah. That's how many frames it takes to do X, Y, Z and how much time I can react. It's a whole nuts thing. But I'm like, I understand that's competitive. But if you're like me, as long as it's not choppy and stopping every 5 seconds, I'm cooling, dude.
For me, honestly, honest to God, as long as my game is not lagging, I do not care.
If I'm not running across the map and I'm though 5 seconds later I'm back at the front, what?
Yeah, it's like for me, it's just, and I think that's like the weird debate is like it's like people who are always like, well, like why complain? Like everyone's just trying to play video games. It's like, well, I get your agreement, like, or I get your argument, but you know, who cares that you think that? Who cares if you're just sitting here? Well, I have both, so I just play video games. It's like, okay.
Thanks for telling you have money. Like, your house is on the list, bucko.
Yeah.
Which one would you rather lose? What? Just tell me which one you'd rather lose. Then you'll really have a preference. But no, like, when I used to work at GameStop, people would come in all the time when they want to buy a console. And they'd be like, well, which one's better? And then there's obviously a difference of opinion all the time. But what I would always just tell them is like, well, what do you want to do with it? Well, I'm playing with my friends. What do your friends have? Well, a PlayStation. Well, you can get a PlayStation. Oh.
It was the sole reason why I got an Xbox. I didn't get an Xbox because of an exclusive or anything like that. It was just in high school, all of my friends had Xboxes.
Well, that was the thing. I was a PlayStation kid. And that's because, like, growing up, like, I had a Sega and everything, and then when the PS1 came out, got that, PS2. I never got the Xboxes. I mean, my dad had a 360 later on, so I got to play on that sometimes. But then it wasn't till like high school, because I had my PS3 and I was happy. I was playing whatever, meeting random people online, like a cool kid. But then I was like, well, I want to play with my friends from school, so I got my 360 set up, and I was playing with you and all the other people, Halo and all that. And then when the 1s and the 4s came out, I did what I like to do, and I started with the PlayStation, because I am a PlayStation guy, preferably. Because again, that's what I've just had the longest. So I got the 4, and then, some time went on, and I went, okay, I'm going to go ahead and get me an Xbox. Ended up getting an Xbox. Some life stuff happens. Had to get, sell the Xbox. Kept my PlayStation, because again, primary console. Some stuff happened on later with that, with an X.
Yeah.
That went away. And then I was like, well, I just want to play with my boys. That's when I got that Xbox. And then I recently got another PS4. And I was like, great, we're set up.
Yeah, because I was kind of the same way. Like, for us, it was, we grew up playing, like, a lot of the Nintendo consoles because they were so much cheaper comparatively to, like, the PlayStations and Xboxes and stuff like that. So for us, growing up and not having a whole lot of money, that was, like, the big Christmas present every couple of years. Is like
the DS?
So I actually got my first DS was for like my 13th or 14th birthday. Yeah. But I remember my dad had made a deal with me. He's like, if you can come up with more than half of the money for a DS, I'll spot you the rest. But you have to be able to pay for at least half of it and a game. And I think the games at the time were probably
like 40.
Like $30-$40, something like that.
Yeah,
and so I remember I had to save up all of my money from Christmas and the money that I got for that birthday just to go get one. And like it was fun and like it was, it was cool and it like was like kind of super nostalgic because, I had a couple of Game Boys growing up and but like it wasn't anything for me, so like I remember we got a Nintendo 64 in like probably like 2000. Maybe no, we had it for way longer than that now that I think.
I never got the Nintendo ones. And it was weird because there were games like GameCube and stuff. I was like, well, I wish I could play that. But then I was just like, but it is what it is, dude. Like as a kid, I didn't have a memory card. It's weird because now if I play the same game like that story with the story mode and I keep like playing it from the beginning again, I would get so mad. But as a kid, it was like, this is awesome. I'm playing the game. See if I could beat the game in the day. Because I had like, I'm trying to think, there was this one, it was like a Rugrats game where there's a giant playhouse in the back and like kind of like Super Mario, where like you'd get the stars and then the next floor would unlock.
Uh-huh.
But that's how this was. But it was just really cool. And the final level was like a catapult, and I don't know, hard to explain. But as a kid, there was one level with mangoes always making me mad. But I never had a memory card. Jack 2, no memory card. I just.
Yeah, because, like, so I remember when we got a PlayStation 2, it wasn't because us kids wanted one. Believe it or not, it was because my dad wanted one. And so he ended up buying it, and it was, like, the fat one, like the original PS2, like the big boy. And we had that PS2 for, like, probably, like, 15 years. We had it for a really long time.
That's awesome.
And I remember, so, like, that was, like we'd play some games on that, but again, just because we didn't have like a whole lot of money, like we didn't like upgrade all the time, but like we would get the newest Nintendo console like the year after it came out, so it was technically old, but because it was so cheap, we would get it. And I remember, I think it was the summer of 2008. That was really when I started to like have like an affinity for playing video games, but I only had the Wii, and so like I would go to like friends' houses and they'd have like PlayStation 2s, or I mean like we still had our PlayStation 2, but like
they had more games.
They just had more games and like a variety of games that like I wasn't necessarily allowed to play.
Grand Theft Auto,
or you know. Games like that. And so like I remember I really fell into wanting to play video games a lot more when I had first played God of War 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Because I was right in that was freshman year that I started to do that.
That's when we talked about God.
And so
3 was coming up.
And so 3 was coming out, and I remember I had played 1 and 2 and I said that's it. Because my plan was I was like, I'm gonna get a summer job, and I'm gonna try to get enough money to get a PlayStation 3, because at the time I was still kind of on the fence on whether or not I was gonna save up to get an Xbox 360 or a PlayStation 3. And God of War was like for me it was such a life-changing game that I was like, dude, that's it. I was like, I don't care what's happening. I was like, I'm getting a PS3. And so I worked an entire summer, saved up as much money as I could, bought a TV and a PlayStation 3. And I bought God of War 3, and I was like, dude, this is the coolest thing in the world to me. And so then I had a PlayStation for the majority of the time that I was in high school.
Right.
And it was so weird, because, like, you know, obviously, like you and I would play Call of Duty on the PlayStation.
Would we? You want to tell them what you used to do to me?
No.
You want to tell them what you did to me?
So it was a one-time thing. I was really into Assassin's Creed 2, couldn't stop playing it.
Where'd you get Assassin's Creed 2?
Was it from you, or did it I thought I borrowed it from Bryce.
No, I let you borrow that one. Because you let me borrow Red Dead for that one.
Okay, yeah, because I remember, because I beat Assassin's Creed 2 that night that we were supposed to play Call of Duty, and I ended up just playing Assassin's Creed till like 5 in the morning.
Yeah, I know. I was sitting there in a Call of Duty lobby with you on the headset. Yeah. Yeah, you left me hanging. This dude ditched me. He said, oh yeah, I'll be right there. I just gotta finish this mission.
Well, no, that's the thing.
2 hours go by. I'm sitting in that lobby still like, I wonder if he's coming back.
Well, no, and that's the thing. Like, it was just like, for me, it was too enthralling to put down. And it's not that I didn't want to play Call of Duty. It was just I kept finding something.
No, I understand.
And so...
kind of like when we play Fallout 76 and I'm like finding something, you're like, I gotta get off. I'm like, but I'm finding cool stuff.
Yeah, and so, but later on, you know, our group of friends had kind of grown, and all of those guys had Xboxes.
Bryce was the guy who like really was the Xbox dude, because I think he was the one that really started me on the track of like,
yeah, because like I would go to his house,
play Halo,
and I would play like Halo Reach, or we would play like Skyrim when it came out, or
I remember he got upset with me because I threw one of his skulls off one of the maps. I didn't know what that did then. I still don't know what it does now, but I remember he was upset.
Yeah, and so going like to other people's houses and like playing an Xbox, like it was never something that I wanted to get. Like I kind of wanted one beforehand, and then I got a PS3, and then so I kind of just was like, oh, whatever. And I remember I sold my PS3 like, I think it was junior year, or maybe it was like near the end of sophomore year.
Green Day BP 2011.
And so I remember the moment I sold it, I like went back into my room and I was like bored. I was like, man, I shouldn't have sold it. Like it was like one of those like weird instant regret things. And I was like, man, I shouldn't have gotten rid of it. Like I should have just saved up money to buy an Xbox, and so that way I would have had both. But then I ended up buying a 360, and I played that for forever. And then when I joined the military, I remember I was in the schoolhouse and I was so bored and I didn't want to wait for my Xbox to come in. And I was like, well, I have the money, so I'm not too worried about it. And so I literally went to the store and bought a little 19-inch TV and a PS3 and a couple of games. And I played that for like 3 or 4 days, and then my Xbox and stuff came in. And so I would still play my PlayStation every once in a while.
Right.
Like I'd still find games that like I'd want to play. But predominantly I would just play on the Xbox just because like I'd play with my buddies or whatever.
It's a good thing you kept that PlayStation too, because when I was being bored here, you let me use it, and I was playing.
I still have that play. I still have it.
I was playing New Vegas. What I'm trying to do right now is I'm trying to find a PS2 that if somebody wants to get rid of for not expensive, because everyone's overcharging for them. Mm-hmm. I know they are. Believe you, I know what it's worth. It ain't worth nearly as much as everyone sells it for. But because people are like, "Well, get a PC with the emulator." I'm like, I don't have a space for a PC right now.
Yeah.
With where I don't really even that. That's $900, you know, for a good one. And like, well, emulate. I don't want to emulate. I just want to play old school games.
Like, there's something like I remember people used to complain that I don't refuse to, but like I don't like having like rechargeable battery packs.
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
Just because it's just for me, it's like if I don't buy, because I can't remember if like the ones that you can buy come with 2 batteries. It's like one's kind of can always sit on the charger, and if the other one dies, you can just take it off.
I think that they just now come with one.
I think
greedy company.
Yeah, and I think they just come with the one, and so it's like, well, if my controller dies, I literally can't play my game until this charges for at least 15-20 minutes.
And that's where I'll give Sony like a big up is like. Theirs is a wireless regardless, and you have to charge it. Mm-hmm. But if it dies, you can just plug it in and play with it plugged in.
And so I used to do that with my Xbox controllers. I would literally just plug it in. Because A, I was tired of buying batteries, and B, I was tired of the rechargeable battery packs. And I was like, I'll just plug it in. Like, I'll literally just plug it into the Xbox and use it that way. And, like, so I had, like, a 10-foot USB cord so I could lay in my bed in the barracks and, like, watch... YouTube videos or watch a movie or something like that, but still have the controller in a decent amount of space. Mm-hmm. And my buddies, I swear to God, they'd be like, "Why you plug your controller in?" And I'm like, "Because I don't want to buy batteries." They're like, "So why don't you just go buy a rechargeable one?" And I'm like, "Because I don't want to. Like, this cord came with the controller. Like, I'm not gonna go buy something if I don't need it."
They probably just gave you the weirdest look. Like
they're like, they're like, okay, man. Like if that's, and it's like, and for me, it just, there's something about having like a corded controller.
Vote to kick parody out the room. Say aye.
And it's just the one guy. It's just my one roommate.
That's
he's
a
50%. He's like, dude, get out of here.
You have like 50% approval rating in this room.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, and for me, it's just like I've done that here, like now that I'm out. Like there was a time where I would leave my controller plugged in all the time because I just didn't want to. Admittedly, it was purely because I was lazy after I got out of the military, and so I wouldn't want to go downstairs at like 3 a.m. to go get batteries if my controller was dead. So I would just keep it plugged in.
You didn't want to go downstairs with your fist balled up ready to fight intruders at 3 a.m.?
Hell no.
Hell yeah.
I mean, I'll do that now. But at the time, I was like, dude, I'm telling you, like, I was not in a good place. And, like, I would literally just lay in bed for hours on end.
That's why you just got to keep the batteries in your room. That's
what I do now. Mistake. That's what I do now.
That's what I have. I go to Sam's Club and I get like a giant like 48 pack of AA, and I have them like Well, because I have my desk kind of thing set up for work right now, so not where I want it to be. But when I do, I just kind of slide it under the stand. Mm-hmm. So if I need them, I just grab 2 out.
Yeah, I had a little snafu with my battery pack, or with my thing of batteries. Something had happened, and one of our cats had like spilled some water, so the backing of it got all wet. So I had to pull all the batteries out, and they're just sitting up in a Ziploc bag, like right in front of my entertainment stand. Because, like, you know, for the most part, like, I sit, like, right in front of my TV. Mm-hmm. Just because, you know, there's not a whole lot of space in my room. So, like, I'm normally, like, right up on my TV.
Right.
And so, you know, if I ever need batteries, I'll just chuck them behind me into the trash can and then just plug new ones in because they're right there. But yeah, man, like, having a wired controller, there's just something about it that seems like I remember like wrapping up, like having to wrap up a controller to put it away
back in the day.
you'd have to sit there and wrap up a controller, and I remember
you're reeling in a fish.
And I remember I had a buddy, so we were wrapping up a controller, and my buddy's dad he goes, you guys shouldn't wrap those up like that because eventually the cords are gonna go bad. Kid me, didn't think that. I was like, no, that's stupid. Like, they're supposed to be wrapped up like that. Like, why else? Like, how else are you gonna wrap it up? And come to find out, like a couple of years later, I had that exact same problem because we would wrap up the controllers, and that right where the wire would go into the controller, you know, from being pulled, it didn't pop out or anything, but the wires had probably just gotten too strained,
just jacked out,
and I remember like looking at it, and I was like, "Wow, he was right."
No, so because I had a college class where they were talking about like studio and production, and so part of it was we had to get the equipment out, like film, whatever. And so when we're like wrapping up the studio cameras, this dude comes out and he's like, "Now, before you start wrapping up anything, you're gonna wrap it up like this." And he teaches us this like crisscross way that wraps things up. Mm-hmm. And like when you wrap it up, you're like, oh, it's wrapped, but you can just literally pull it and everything just comes out. Kind of like a slip knot where just, whoop, oh, it's not really there. Mm-hmm. But it is very secure. But he was telling us, he's like, the reason you wrap it this way is because it's good for the cords. Mm-hmm. He was like, if any of you dirt bags wrap it up just like in an ovular motion, he's like, I want you to get out of my class. You will fail the semester. And then this is where he gets me. He's like, I'm not the one paying to be here. Imagine paying to fail a class. I was like, oh my god. So
the college professors are wild, dude.
But now if you ever see me like wrap up, like not with the vacuum I have now because it's broken, but any time you'd ever see me wrap up a vacuum, I wrap it up that way with the cord. Because I'm like, oh man.
You're like, I'm gonna fail.
I'm gonna mess something up. I'm gonna break my vacuum even more.
Yeah, it's just like I remember like I'm kind of like a little afraid now of like power outages, especially when I am playing, because I had a really bad experience in the barracks one time. So the power had gone out, didn't think anything of it. Turn my Xbox back on and keep playing, and then I think it was like 15 minutes into me playing again, the power went out again. Well, something had happened, and there was like a power surge, and it had messed my Xbox up. And so I ended up having to play my 360 because for some reason I didn't have the money at the time to just go replace my Xbox.
Was that when you was playing all the Maddens, getting all them achievements?
No, so I did that in high school.
Oh, okay.
I did that in high school, right before I went into the military.
Gotcha.
Because I had nothing but time, so I would try to just 100% games, and so I remember like having to play on my 360 and thinking like it was such a weird feeling because you go from something that's like still pretty new and then having to go to a console that's literally like almost 10 years old. And I was like, so like we would play like Mortal Kombat and like just all kinds of like these really old like super popular Xbox 360 games. And I was like, this isn't like that bad. Like I wouldn't be too mad if I wasn't able to get a new Xbox like for a decent amount of time, because like I still have probably 60 some odd 360 games,
right?
And it's one of those things like I've even thought about like just playing on it now, like replugging everything in and being able to play some of them that aren't backwards compatible.
I was going to say, even with the fact that some of the games you've been playing like in recent like time have been just backwards compatible 360 games.
Yeah,
like
and
New Vegas.
Yeah, like New Vegas for Fallout 3, and it's like those games were like a huge part of like my developmental years.
Yeah, it's
just super fun to go back and play.
They really are.
Like especially like New Vegas.
I love New Vegas.
I'll play that game all the time. All the time if I ever get the chance, and like you watching like Fallout lore videos now, and like watching like a bunch of Oxhorn videos or just like other Fallout YouTubers. It just like that's what I wanted to do last night. Is I was like I want to play Fallout. Like I think I'm gonna try to replay Fallout 4, or finish up the current character that I have.
Well, that's what I did. Is I popped in and I just went to the character that I had set up. Because I had beat the game here. That was the last time I played it, 2018. Because I looked, I was like, oh, I beat the game, but I didn't get any of the faction endings. I just beat it with the Minutemen because I was just trying to do whatever. So I picked the whatever the most recent load I had was, where it was a new character I made when I was still here, and I didn't know anything of his perks, but knowing me, I play the games the same every time. I was like, oh yeah, this is all the exact same perks.
Yeah,
and so, but I've just been going through doing a bunch of the old stuff, like. I went to the Institute, found out who Sean was. I was like, oh, wow. And that's all I've done in the main story. Then I went to Far Harbor. I beat the Automatron. I beat the Far Harbor thing. I got the whole peaceful ending out there. Now I'm in the middle of Nuka World trying to get all that stuff done.
Yeah, and like I think for me, like I still have to do the Railroad ending. But I remember when I started doing the Railroad ending, I was trying to get... Like I think I was trying to like 100% the game at the time. And I was like, okay, so I'll try to 100% it, and I'll finish up with beating it through the Railroad.
Right.
And I remember, and like it was such like a different experience because like when I first play the game, like I'll kind of explore and I'll kind of do some stuff, but for the most part, I kind of want to like I can't just not play the story because I don't want to get like too bored. And like I always like I'll play it like on like the easiest difficulty. Just like that first playthrough, just to kind of get the story out of the way and get an idea for what the game is, and so it's funny because it's taken me. I think the Railroad one is like it's like my 5th or 6th Fallout 4 playthrough.
Dude, I'm telling you.
And I've like it's each one's not the exact same.
Right.
For the most part, I'll fall back into the same sort of stuff. But this last
so many stats you can play.
Yeah, and so this last playthrough, like I remember. Like, I was doing... I had discovered that... well, I can't remember what the name of that boat is, but it's the boat that's crashed in the middle of Boston.
The one with the robots?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had never seen that before. Never seen it before. For
Really?
whatever reason, had just never seen it, or... Maybe I had, but I never went up there.
I remember the first time I did that quest, and
I was so confused. Yeah, I was like, "What is this?" I was like, "This is so
when they're
goofy."
flying away, I was like, "Oh wow!" And then they crashed. And you hear them go, "We've made it, boys!" I was like, "What the hell?"
Yeah, I remember like, but like it was something that was like it felt cool because I was like I'd never done that before.
Well, when I had it, like when the game first came out, 2015, before the DLC came out, I did this thing where I was just kind of playing devil's advocate because I was with the Institute, Brotherhood, and Railroad, just kind of getting all their stuff done as I could, up until the point where it's like, we got to pick one. So I quick saved the game, and I did each of their endings from that point, and then I was like, which one did I like best? And I picked that save file, and that was just my guy.
Yeah.
And so I think on my PlayStation, my main dude was the Institute guy, because I was like, that's my son. I'm just going to be there.
Yeah, yeah.
Loyalty, blood. Water thick or something like that. I don't know what they say.
Yeah, and so like and
blood
like,
in, blood out, cholo.
Like it's and even for me like it's weird going from like Fallout 4 New Vegas and then playing like 3 like you were talking about that one time where it's like 3 is just like it's like such a weird feel to the game, and I think it's because it was the first like iteration from Bethesda.
Third person.
And so everything's just like really super clunky and it doesn't feel like now you can tell how broken that game is. And you can tell how not, like, not necessarily not how fun it is, but how kind of almost hard it is to play. But I remember the first time I had ever played it, I was like, this game is stupid as fuck. I was like, this game is ass. And the friend that I was with, they're like, no, like, it's like a really good game. But they're like, if you don't like RPGs, then you probably won't like it that much. And then I ended up playing New Vegas, and I was like, this is awesome. And then I played Fallout 3, and then I think playing New Vegas was like it put a different perspective on the game as a whole, because then I could go back and play 3, and I was like, okay, no, now I understand what's going on, and like you have to like build your character a certain way.
Well, and my favorite thing about the Fallout games, like one of them is just like I don't read the terminals a lot because I have just the attention span, but sometimes I'll have to just kind of understand certain things. But I love how like the holotapes tell you stories, and you're just like, wow. Or even like the radio beacon signals, and like certain areas will give you a whole story just by looking at the setting. So one of them is just really because it's always like usually mostly depressing stuff.
Yeah,
like there's a radio signal, and it's like one of the family distress signals. And I was going to find what they were talking about, and as you get closer, it gets more clear. And it's a guy, and he's talking about how he misses his wife, and he just wants her to come home. And he's like, me and the kids, we're safe in the bunker. And that's the radio signal, and it just keeps repeating. You find the bunker, it's empty, but like you see beds, and you see toys on the ground. You're like, oh, there were kids here. And then you read the little terminal thing, and then the family had to leave. We're like, hey, we can't be in the bunker right now. We have to go. And you find a holotape where the kid's crying, leaving a message for his mom. But then you figure out that his mom was a nurse at one of the hospitals, and she had to stay at the hospital to help people deal with everything as they were getting blown up.
Yeah.
And you find hers, and you're like, oh my gosh. And you're like, this is so depressing. But it's so, like, good.
And I think that's the cool thing about, especially New Vegas, because I think New Vegas is setting at being in the middle of the desert, so everything's kind of barren and anyway, depressing anyway. And then, like, you find, like, that farm kind of up near where the boomers are at. And, like, you find out that kid is, like, all by himself. He has no idea that his parents are ghouls. And then he ends up having to just
dome him,
kill his parents to feel somewhat normal, I guess. Because he's like, well, I don't want to see them like that. Like, I can't see my parents like that. And I remember, I think I had, because I'd probably, like, dealt with something, like, seen it before, like, in an earlier playthrough. But I had never really, like, grasped, like, the emotions of stuff like that until this last time that I played it on hardcore, and I had gone through, because I was just exploring. I think I was just trying to level up, because I needed to get something up to, like, 100, or I needed, like, another perk, or whatever. And so I was just exploring, and I was like, oh man, like, what is this? And I remember, killing all these other ghouls, and then, like, reading that story, and I was like, dude, what the hell, man? I was like, this is just too much.
But that's what's so beautiful. Like, I really wish that they would make a series, like a series, like a TV kind of series, kind of based on it. But, like, I don't know, because I kind of make one in my head all the time, and I'm gonna pitch you guys my conceptual idea of a Fallout TV series. Just a dude in the wasteland, walking around, kind of a mercenary taking the jobs. Kind of like how, you'd be in the wasteland, right? But you can't tell what his karma is, whether he's good or bad. You just know he's taking the mercenary stuff. He obviously has a heart for certain things. But along the way, he starts to find a lot of pre-war stuff, like holotapes, and he just tries to piece together history, but, like, have, like, a gloomy kind of feel to all the stories. Like, they're sad, but there's also some, like, happy moments, but at the end of the day, you realize that this guy is also probably not quite who he says he is. He's had a whole lot that he's dealt with, but he's just surviving, trying to help people, make a better world. But there's obviously that moral gray area because they have different ideas of what's right and wrong.
Yeah, and I think that would be... because, like, there's that one that's, like, really super popular on YouTube. It's called, like... I think it's called, like, Fallout Red Star or something like that.
Where the guy's wearing the NCR trooper outfit with the helmet.
Yeah, so there's that one, and then there's another one. It's called, like, Nuka something or other. It's like a, like, you can, obviously it's like a fan-made thing. And I think it was a Machinima series.
They did that one about the Leggett. That was really cool.
That one was really cool, that fan-made one. That one
when he's sitting in the chair and he puts the helmet on.
Yeah, that one was really super cool, and it's like... it's for me, it's always kind of interesting, like, to see, like, because I remember, like, growing up and, like, playing certain video games and being like, dude, this would make, like, a really cool movie.
All the time.
And Fallout was one of them, but then, like, I started to realize that, like, you couldn't really do a Fallout movie and not explore all of these different endings.
Right.
And that's why it would be better as a TV show, where it's like, okay, like, instead of just maybe focusing on, like, one guy, you could focus on, like, one person per episode, but they're doing, like, a faction quest, or like, a faction ending.
Or even like this, because this was another thing I had, is, like, have an episode, like the pilot episode. It's a complete kind of, like a pre-war thing, where you're like, well, what's the show about? But then it ends with, and then it goes Fallout, and like, what? And then the next episodes are like that. It's all different, people doing different things in the wasteland, surviving, like, for an hour or whatever, how long the episode is, but HBO style, where there's no commercials. But something ties them all together, where it'd be like at the end, each person was, like, doing something, but they all left the holotape, and they're all dead. And the guy at the end, maybe like 100 years later, he has each of their holotapes, and he's trying to find something.
Yeah.
Like, that'd be cool.
That'd
like,
be cool.
what were they all doing?
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. Actually, now that I think about it, that actually be a really good idea.
Pre-war, get them invested. Have all these people, like, have heroic stories, good and bad, go through the motions. Last episode in, like, the season or whatever, be like 100 years later, and you're like, what? And it's just a guy, and he has all these people's different, like, holotapes about what they were doing, and he's like, they were looking for something.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea right there. But, like, it's just, it's something that's so, like, for me, like, so, like, with, like, Fallout 76, for instance, I think the premise of the game is really good. I think, like, the idea that Bethesda had, I'm in no way defending how that game was released and all of that stuff, but I think that idea of, like, okay, it's only 20 years after the bombs fell, and, you try to go, rebuild the wasteland.
It's like the old people that are in the wasteland remember the old.
Yeah, and it's like, like I said, I'm not defending how Bethesda did that. I think ideally there should have been NPCs to begin with,
right?
Because it's not like people would have fled the area, but at the same time, like, for me, I've always wondered, like, well, it's like, okay, there's only, like, a couple of places that, like, we really know that bombs fell. So, like, Washington, D.C. is one, so that's why the Capital Wasteland is the way it is.
Nevada.
Places like my assumption is that, like, it'd be, like, major cities is what was getting hit. And, like, obviously you'd have a few strays that would, like, they'd go out and they'd hit, like, in the middle of nowhere or something like that. But, like, for me, like, you would think that
some place that wasn't hit that still.
Like, you would think that, like, obviously, like, yeah, people would flee. Like, they'd try to get out of the area because obviously you don't know where the bombs are going to hit, so you're going to leave. But eventually, and I think maybe maybe Bethesda did it that way on purpose. Is because, okay, all of these people, there's going to be nobody around because they all fled the area. But now that enough time has passed, quote unquote, that people feel like, okay, maybe it is safe to go back to where we're from to see what's there. I think there's a little bit of a weird thing with just how the game is, just being online and not being like an actual linear story.
Right.
But at the same time, like, now that I kind of think about it, like, that idea does make a little bit more sense, that people would flee. But like you were saying, like, you'd have to think that there'd be an area where it's like, no, like, the bombs aren't coming here.
Well, I'm trying to think, because I'm pretty sure that there are certain areas like that in the games. I don't know which ones, but, like, I'm trying to think, because I don't think the Big Empty got hit.
No, that didn't get hit, but I mean,
but it was already desert. But if you go, like, their houses are just untouched.
Yeah, and so, like, I think
they're robot people.
Yeah, I think for me it would be really interesting to see, like, kind of like, so obviously Fallout 4 tried to do it, where it's like, okay, cool, you get a little glimpse of pre-war America, and then, obviously, spoiler alert, if you haven't played Fallout 4, I don't care.
Or any of them,
but, and then the bombs fall, and then, obviously you get frozen, and 200 years pass. Well, it's like, okay, well, how about there's a Fallout game or like a TV show where it's like, okay, the bombs fell, and that's where it starts. It's not like 20 years. Like, there's not like a huge gap of time where like a lot of things could happen.
Have one where there's people in a vault. Have one where the people are just outside as it happens.
Literally just outside trying to survive, trying to figure out what happened, trying to figure out how to rebuild certain things, or just stuff like that. Like, I think that would be really interesting to see, like how how Diamond City, like how many people were living.
Ghoulification.
Yeah, like how many people were living in that area of Boston, and then either left and then came back, or just stayed there, and they all just happens to go into the baseball stadium because it's a big enough area that you can wall it off and you can close it up and all of that stuff. Like, and just like I think there's like a lot of really cool like conceptual ideas that you could use from the Fallout universe that would just be really, really interesting.
No, I agree. I think you'd have to be pretty lore friendly with some of it though to make sure you're not breaking any kind of boundary.
Yeah, for sure. And I think
a lot of that when like there's even like the slightest detail off, someone's like,
and for the most part, you could kind of combat that with being like, well, look at how movies that are adapted from books. There's a lot of stuff that's different in books compared to a movie, just because of of time and production value and that sort of stuff. So I mean, you could use that to get away with it, but I think with something like Fallout, like the Fallout universe, I think the reason that there's so many lore discrepancies between 1 and 2, and then the Bethesda series. Just because Bethesda, obviously, like, well, we own the rights. Like, we'll keep some of the original lore just to keep it a cohesive game, but we're going to add certain things to make it our own game.
Which they've done, and they have kept pretty much most all the lore. It's been very just minuscule things. This is what I mean, like, Fallout 2. The guy who made Jet is in Fallout 2. But when they go to like the vault that Vault Tec made, and they're like, "Oh, this is the druggies," there's Jet in there, and they're like, "Oh," but that's just something where I don't think that they were like, "Oh, we're trying to break lore." I think they were just like, "Oh, it's drugs. We're just gonna put in there." But I think someone just went like, "What else?" No, it's just drugs.
I think you always have people like that who try to do that anyway, especially with something like Fallout, where there is a ton of lore, and if you spend the time to actually go through and
every little thing does have a story. It's why it's the way it is,
and
you just gotta look into it.
Yeah, and so it's just like it'd be just like anything. It's like you can't tell me that there aren't Harry Potter nerds out there who are like, no, on page 133 of book 4, paragraph 5.
They are. Yeah, the movie, The Goblet of Fire, when he goes, "Harry, did you put your name in the Goblet of Fire?" People have a big issue with that line because like, what the fuck? In the book, he whispers it to Harry. He says, "Harry, did you put your name in the Goblet of Fire?" But in the movie, he goes, "Harry!"
Well, so I could get it being in the book. Obviously, there maybe he's trying to be a little discreet.
Right.
But for a movie, like, you want it to be dramatic enough. You want, like...
raw emotion.
Exactly, and
you
so...
gotta make those little changes,
And I think, like, certain little changes are good if they're done right. I think if you like, let's say that they were to make a Fallout TV show, and they say, "Oh yeah, no, super mutants are, a product of, of Fallout." They're a product of nuclear fallout, whereas it's like, I get where you're coming from. I get where you could maybe, perhaps, if you don't know anything about the games and the story, where you could maybe get that from. I could understand that. But no. Like that, like it would be like that would be something that would be too big of a change to just kind of go over people's heads. Or you'd have people who, like, even if it was something small, to be like, well, okay, well, it's not called FEV, and it's just some other weird acronym. And, people would be like, well, okay, the premise is still the same, but we don't appreciate the fact that you changed what it is when, like, you have the source material right there. Like, I could see that, but...
Right.
But I think it's just something that would happen no matter what you did.
Or if they let you use beer caps for money, too, because I've never seen anyone use the beer cap. It's always a Nuka-Cola cap.
Yeah, and it's like,
I wouldn't have an issue if they're like, "Oh, here's a cap and it's a beer cap." I won't be like, Nah, it's Bud Light. Get out of here. Like, they're doing what they can with what they got.
Mm-hmm. And I think,
Mind their business.
and I think it's something that's weird that like, you just find caps. Like it never like the ones that you do find, sure, like if they're facing the right way, like sure it'll probably say Nuka-Cola or whatever. But like, you never really know. Like if you just pick up a cap stash, you have no idea what's in there. So I mean, maybe there are bottle caps from like beer bottles or
That's what's weird though. In the game is like, you drink any soda, Vim, Nuka-Cola, Sunset Sarsaparilla, you get a cap. Mm-hmm. You drink the beer, you don't get the cap.
No cap. No cap. Maybe
no cap.
maybe they corked their beer in the Fallout universe. Who knows?
I'd hope they're not corking that stuff.
Hell no, that'd be disgusting.
How long have it been there? Oh,
at least 200 years, depending on which game.
Fermented all beer.
It's just skunky, just tastes like shit.
Well, because there's a lot that like I still see as like room for Fallout to grow, because there's like over 100 some odd vaults at least, and they obviously haven't even gotten all those, And
I think that's what a lot of people's like. So for me, I think that would be my one real nitpick, is that it's like, okay, you have 1, 2 in New Vegas, and those all take place on the West Coast,
right?
Then you have Fallout Tactics. I'll give them that. Fallout Tactics takes place in Chicago. I'll give them that one.
Well, I think 2 had some Chicago root in there. I think you go to Chicago in 2.
I don't know enough about.
I could be completely wrong. I'm gonna look it up because 2 is the one that's like. It's the only one that's directly related to another one, like direct.
It's related to the first one.
Yeah, because you're like the dude's grandson from the first one. It's like because 3 and 4 are related because there are people from the Commonwealth in there, but 2 is like
it's the only direct sequel.
Exactly.
And so for me, my thing, and then you have the Bethesda series, and that's predominantly on the East Coast.
Where Bethesda's located.
Where and that's fine and dandy. Like that's cool. Like it's cool that we got to explore the Capital Wasteland, and that we got to explore Appalachia and Boston. But like, not to be biased here, but what the fuck happens to NORAD? I'm telling you, like
they talk about that in the lore if you read the terminals. Well, no, they don't specifically talk about NORAD, but they do talk about how the Chinese that were invading, they were the Hoover Dam. They were chased through the Colorado, like through the state of Colorado, and the Chinese who invaded with their stealth suits actually got caught in Denver and like killed in the middle of Denver, Colorado.
Yeah, because even in New Vegas, again, there's the guy who runs. He's the guy who I forget what his name is, but he's the guy who is in charge of all the dogs. If you talk to him, he tells you that he's like, well, we mostly get them from Denver because the whole city's overrun with all of these super wild dogs.
Dogs in Denver?
And so they get all of these dogs from Denver if they can't get enough dogs to reproduce that they have. So every once in a while, they'll have to go get dogs from Denver. And it's like, that's cool, but like, again, not to be biased, and like, even when we drive around and be like, oh, that'd be a cool Fallout location, or that would be a cool Fallout location.
I just think that it works best because it's a military state.
Exactly. It's
like
a huge
Air
military
Force Academy, the Fort Carson, the Fort Peterson. We have all that right here just in the Springs. Like the mountains and stuff, the geography.
Like, again, we're being very, very biased here.
But biased with reason.
Exactly. And so, like, there's a guy on YouTube, I think his name is, it's TK Mantis. He's a really cool guy. His videos are really interesting, and he does, like, a lot of, like, documentary-style videos.
Right.
About Fallout, and so he lives up in Washington State, and he was saying that exact same thing, where he's like, he's like, I'm being biased because I live here and I know the area, but he's like, there's a lot of really interesting things up here. And he's like, and if you go back,
needle?
Yeah, and he's like, if you go back into like Fallout canon, he's like, there's a vault up here, in the States somewhere. He's like, it's like, I think it's like Vault 0 or something like that. I won't swear to that. Well, but he's like, but that would be interesting to go see what that vault would be like. And there's like all of like just the huge forests, the mountains, and the ocean, and just like all of that stuff. He's like, you have all of that like readily available to you with this one state. And he's like, if I were to make Fallout 5, that's where I would personally put it. But he's like, but again, I'm being very biased. So,
well, let me look here, because because there's tons of vaults that are like named, but they don't have a location either.
Mm-hmm.
But there are others that like you never get to go to, but you know of exist, but they're in states. Like they give you the states, but like Vault 36, Vault 42, Vault 43. No, Vault 43, dude. I wish that one was the Colorado one. That's the man with the puppets. You ever heard that story in Fallout?
The puppet like convinces him to kill people, right?
So the puppet, like, I guess, kills the other puppets in the vault.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, what are you doing? But then the puppet convinces him to leave the vault and not just kill people, but like not to kill innocent people, I guess, but to go out and reclaim the waste. And so the legend is like the guy, like, he goes outside with the puppet, claims a giant ant, mounts it, and rides it.
Huh.
And, like, he just goes out just, like, killing raiders and stuff. But, because I think it was when Fallout 3 was released, and they released a little comic about him.
Uh-huh.
But the only actual mention that I know of in the games about him is in Fallout 3 at the Slavers Camp. There's a jumpsuit, the Vault 43 jumpsuit. Uh-huh. There's a holotape next to it, and they're like, don't ever talk about Vault 43. And they're like, why? And like, just don't talk about Vault 43. That's the guy. And they're like, oh, that's the guy?
okay, yeah, I think I know which one you're talking about now.
Yeah, because there's that whole slave camp up north with like the giant donut guy, look like from The Simpsons, the big boy looking guy.
Yeah, and so like I think for me, I think it's something that like Bethesda, like obviously there's not vaults everywhere,
right?
But like I think that,
but a military town, come on, you would think that's where a vault should be.
That like NORAD would probably be a vault at the end of the day.
Because the vaults were not just regular vaults, but the scientific experiments.
Yeah.
But they said that thing in Fallout 4, because the guy was the main guy that you can play as, or unless you play as a woman, but the dude, because of his military service, you get free admission from Vault Tec to the vault.
Mm-hmm.
What?
I'd be safe, dude. I'd be safe.
You think you'd be safe, dude? You probably go through some crazy experiment, dude.
Probably. For me, I think that's like the most interesting part about like it's not the most interesting for me, but it's one of the more interesting things to just know that like that's literally something that would happen in real life. Is that there would be vaults and they would. There's no what the hell yeah the government's gonna do experiments on people.
But that's the thing. It's not even the government. It's just Vault Tec. It's a corporation that like runs the government pretty much. It seems. And I wish we had a series about them.
About Vault Tec?
Yeah, just more so. Like, because maybe I haven't been paying attention, but I don't know whatever happened to the CEO of Vault Tec.
Oh, I guess that's a good point. I mean, like, you could use 76 as an example because it's like you have Vault Tec University, so like...
Where they would, make
like,
people
teach people how to be overseers and stuff like that. But, like, even then, it's not like these overseers were being sent to these vaults and like they knew beforehand that they got there that like what was happening in that vault.
Some of them did. Very few of them knew. That's the problem. And the ones that knew, things already happened to them.
Mm-hmm. Like, or it's like like Vault 11 I think is like the real famous one.
Yeah, where they have to kill the overseer every day.
And it's like
just to find out that if they didn't kill anybody, it would say test completed. Here's more food and water rations for X number of years to add on top of your already X number of years supply.
Mm-hmm. And it's just like that, to me, that's like the most wild one. Because it's like, I could see people doing that. Like, you're in an enclosed space, everybody kind of, it would almost like be living, like, my assumption at least, is it would almost feel like living in a small town. Is where everybody knows everybody, and you just make enemies. For whatever reason.
Well, and that's the other one. I don't remember the vault number, but that was one of the vaults where it's the computer system, Zach's, and he's just trying to tell people, he's like, hey, you should take charge of the vault. And then the one guy who's taking charge is like, well, I don't know, but one of the residents goes mad and starts, hurting somebody. But then all this dumb stuff happens along the way to the point where it's just... I think it's in Fallout 76.
I think so. I think
this is the story about the nuclear winter, like the battle royale mode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, because you have to level up to find the story about all this, I guess. But as you level up, you'll find the different terminals and like holotapes about it. But the system pretty much like was just messing with these people, just telling them, "Oh, well, this is what this did. This is who this person is."
Mm-hmm.
All the way up until the point where the one guy who went mad and killed everybody was by default the overseer, and he was like, "We have to do your overseer duties now that you are officially overseer."
Mm-hmm.
And the guy's like, "What's the point? No one else is in here." And Zach, the computer system's like, "Well, you still are, and you're gonna have to still go under an evaluation in this many years." To the point where during the evaluation, he gets in trouble by the computer system. And he's like, deems him unfit to be the overseer. He's like, "Well, who else is gonna be the overseer? There's no one else in here." And that's when he hides in a box, and then the crates shoot him out.
Yeah.
And then Zach says like, "Well, where's he at?" And you can find his body if you play Nuclear Winter. It's somewhere, I don't remember, but it's just crazy stuff like that, dude.
I think that'd be a really interesting thing. Like if you could almost like even if they just did not necessarily a game, because I don't think necessarily like a Vault Tec game would be fun.
No, but just like a story. He's like a TV show, just kind of like Mad Men, but Vault Tec. Well,
yeah, because that'd be cool too to like figure out like what experiments they're gonna put where and like why they're choosing certain experiments and
what made them want to do these to people anyway.
Yeah.
Because that's what always gets me. Is like, why are they doing this? Especially after the bombs fall. Like, how are you going to test them?
Well, were
you planning on putting them in there before?
That's like a pretty like known theory in the Fallout community is that Vault Tec is the one who started the war, so they could do their experiments, not to sell vault space.
But that gets you wondering: is like, what happens to like the higher ups in there? What do they gain from this? Because obviously, with these experiments, they're not going to be able to do anything. The world's over.
And that's where the Enclave comes in, because then the Enclave is this quote unquote secret government,
dude,
that is supposed and I think that's like the weird Fallout universe's way of being like, hey, check it out, like, those conspiracy theories about the secret government that you guys always be talking about on the internet, like, guess what? In this universe, it's true. Like, there is a secret puppet government that's like, it's like the face of government is what you see. And that's who you think the government is, but the real government are these like really shady characters, kind of like in X-Files, where it's you have all these people who work for the government, but they know about all of these things that like happen, like all of these extraterrestrial things that happen, and they're like trying to shush these people up because they're like, no, you can't tell people all of these things.
Well, you know what I gotta say about the Enclave?
Who is it? What? I should kick your fucking ass. Who is this?
Oh man!
Use the Fallout 2 Enclave quote to talk about the Enclave. Dang, B.
I think this is probably the longest one that we've had, and I think that's...
Sorry, y'all. I know it wasn't a lot of laughs, but Fallout's good, man.
It's too good. It's too good to pass up.
It's way too good, man.
And I think once you leave, I think I'm going to go upstairs and play it.
I'm going to go home and play it. I'm about to... If you haven't played any of the Fallouts, I suggest you do. If you don't like point and click, suck it up. Play the first two. But really, play 3, play New Vegas, play 4. 76, hit or miss. You don't have to. I mean, if you got some buddies, probably. But just immerse yourself in the great story of what would happen. Because before we end, I just want to make this very clear. The Fallout world history is pretty much our world history up until World War II ends. That's when they have something called the Great Divergence, which is where they change the norms and go to nuclear power. And everything from then on changes the world just... Mm-hmm. And that's quite possibly some of the most interesting stuff about Fallout.
Yeah, so I think it's just, for me, it's just a series of games that will always hold a special place in my heart. I hope that whenever Fallout 5 decides to come out, that Bethesda pulls their head out of their asses and they it's like they try to like actually put some effort into it. Not saying that they don't put effort into their games, but 76 was... I think a lot of people are going to have a lot of trust issues if a new Fallout game comes out from Bethesda, because it's going to be like, well, remember the last Fallout game you guys had? Remember how bad that was?
Well, like I said, my theory, just like ESO, it's just to hold you over until we give you a new Fallout game. Because think about it like this. Everyone's mad about the microtransactions, right? Mm-hmm. However, you don't have to pay anything extra for it. The Wastelanders was free. A lot of the other stuff was free. Everything you pay for is specifically cosmetic based. they're very upfront about that. You can pay for your own private server, but what I think is that they take that money to kind of just put into other projects.
I mean, that's the hope.
That's what I think, because Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be coming out.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to come out next year.
And I think that they're just more focused on
ESO is supposed to come out around the holidays this year.
We'll see what happens.
I mean, we'll see what happens.
But I'm thinking that that's what they're just like, listen, we just want to crank this out right now, take this Fallout game in the meantime, and any money we make off this Fallout game, we're going to use to pay our employees and just kind of get some other stuff going while we, blah, blah, blah. They already have Fallout kind of written in the grand scheme, like, okay, so what we want to do. But
so again, I will probably have very high hopes, and I'll probably be just as excited for the new Fallout. Whenever they announce it, I'll be just as excited as I was when I found out about Fallout 4, when I found out about 76.
Well, remember, when it comes to Fallout games, Bethesda keeps those under the wraps. Remember, no one knew Fallout 4 was coming out until a month before it released.
That's a good point.
Because everyone's minding their business, and Twitter does an update. Bethesda puts out, please stand by, and everyone goes,
I just got goosebumps just thinking about it.
I just did too.
Because I remember seeing it on Facebook where I saw it. Yeah, and I was like, oh, dude,
everyone,
no
what?
way.
And then the next day, press conference with Bethesda, huh? Fallout 4, Pit-Boy edition, sold out right there while he was on stage.
Yeah, so I think that's a pretty good spots to end it. I think
Facebook, y'all should like the page. Go on the YouTube channel, sub. I know y'all. I see you. I see some of y'all listen to this, make it to the end. More power to you. If you guys, if you listen to this, I'm sure Last of Us 2 will already be out by this point. Because Last of Us 2 comes out Friday. Mm-hmm. I know the ending. I will spoil the ending if you do not sub to our YouTube channel. You do not pass this on, I swear, I'm going to drop the biggest spoiler on your head. I know how it ends. I watched the ending. I said, oh my gosh.
He said, please don't do it to me.
I'm not going to tell you if it's good or if it's bad. I'm just going to tell you, I'm going to spoil it for you. In detail. Every minute. Every thing that happens before. Every little word that they say, everything right before them little the credits roll up. But other than that, click the bell, click the notification, do the Spotify.
Click the notification, Spotify, follow us on Spotify. I actually am going to make a shout out to a couple of my buddies who have their own little companies.
Ooh.
So go ahead on Facebook. There's a page called DOS Militia. It's a clothing company from one of my buddies who I was in the military with. They got some cool clothes.
Hell yeah.
So make sure to check them out, like their Facebook page. And then I got another buddy who I actually work with currently, who is also in the military. He was a submariner in the Navy. So go follow him on Instagram at Test Depth. It's just like a interesting submariner brand. Something if that's something you're interested in, stuff like that. So make sure you go give them some love too, and tell them that that you heard of them from this podcast. And I'm sure that they'll be forever grateful, because I'm glad that that those are two brands that from buddies that I know that are trying to do their thing. So big shout out to them, and staying on their path as well, and trying to do their own thing.
Yeah, we'll put those links in the descriptions and whatnot on the YouTubes, and we'll put them on the group where we be sharing the memes and all the goodies. So with that, I know it's been a long one, but I hope y'all enjoyed just chilling with the Brews and the Bros.
See you guys.
Bye.